Today I'm going to take you through the entire process of making homemade lip balm from scratch. That is, making the beeswax from scratch. Nothing else. I don't know how to make all those other oils and stuffs. Okay, well I kind of do, but let's just not get into that. Well, first thing you're going to need is the comb, right? Or a source of wax to melt down and render into your beeswax. So usually where I get most of my beeswax is I'll just cut them off of frames, and this is the best beeswax to use. This stuff is the purest and freshest stuff you can find. This is all brand new, made by the bees, and it's also super fun because it is so satisfying to cut it off the frames, and you can get all that honey out of there too. And so I think this is the best source of beeswax, but the problem is it doesn't give you all that much. Unless you have a bunch of beehives, and where I only have the one, and I live in a colder climate, I don't get a bunch of honey frames. But once you've got all your beeswax sliced off, and I'm going to show a couple more good examples of slicing it off just because, well, it's just that awesome. Once you get into a rhythm with this, it is super duper fun. It's like the greatest thing. It's like one of those scenes where the Jedi in Star Wars are slicing through a thick metal thing with the lightsaber, and it just glides through it effortlessly. That's what this feels like. So once you have your source to get your wax to render, you're going to take that and put it into a double boiler system. And so that's basically you get your wax in there, and here I'm using a frame. Usually you wouldn't do this because it takes a while for the bees to make it, but I was running low on beeswax and I did need a greater supply, so I ended up just taking it straight out the frame. But you take your beeswax source and then you put it in one pot of some kind, and then you're going to put that in another pot full of boiling water. So the reason you don't just cook it directly on top of the stove is because wax does burn, and it's an interesting thing to think about because usually when you think about wax, you don't really think about it burning. Like, you've lit candles on fire, sure, and it vaporizes and burns, but it doesn't really char or turn black. But if you cook it directly on stovetop, it will do that. You can get it to burn. So that's why you use your double boiler. And also you add that water in just to help leach out more impurities. Like that's what it looks like when you burn your wax. That dark wax, that's burned wax. And you can still use it, I think, but the properties of wax are kind of, well, they're burned, they're damaged. It's brittle, it's not as good, and it's not as flexible as regular stuff. So then you're going to strain it through something like a cheesecloth. That's what I use. I used just a regular cheesecloth, but you can use some other very, very fine filters and that kind of stuff. This is just the easiest way I've found to do it. Then you're going to leave it and let it drain. And once you've done that, you should be left with something that looks a little like this. And so what this is, I think you're probably wondering, what is the stuff that you're filtering out? That's going to be little things like little pieces of wood from the frames, or the little bit of dirt that the bees track in. Because the bees, although incredibly clean and 100% sanitary, they still do track in things. So there's what the wax looks like when it's cooled down and went from liquid gold to solid gold. This stuff is actually more valuable than your honey because it just takes so much longer for the bees to make it. Like, when you saw me cutting that frame, it was full of honey, but there's only so much wax in there. And so I'm breaking it off of the container, and then I'm going to actually show you what the water does. And if you can see that water, it kind of looks like a little bit more bronzy, like almost honey caramely color. That's because it's pulled out some impurities like the dirt, and it's also pulled out any leftover honey residue. And so here you have it, perfectly pure wax. And it smells so good. Like, if you've ever tasted honey, imagine that, but aerosolized into the air, and then like this richer beeswax smell. I just love it. So now to make lip balm. So you take your 1 part wax, and for this recipe I was using 9.6 grams of beeswax, and then you take your coconut oil, and I was using 9.45 grams of that. And then you take your carrier oil, and it doesn't really matter what it is, but as long as you have 9.3-ish grams of that. I was using fractionated coconut oil, but it doesn't really matter what you use so long as it's a nice food-safe oil. Now that was the vitamin E oil, and this is the peppermint oil. And these two aren't technically essential, but they make it so that you have that, like, the feel of lip balm, you know, that the smell, and the vitamin E oil helps it trap moisture so your lips actually get rejuvenated, and it's not just slapping grease on your face, because where's the fun in that? I think we've all had it where we, washed our hands with some old-fashioned soap and it's left that residue. Like, it's just not fun to have a residue like that. It doesn't feel good. It feels weird. But anyway, so once you've heated up your wax, you mix in your liquid oil and your other oil, and you don't technically have to do it in this order, but the thing that takes the longest to melt should be melted first. That's the rule of thumb that I've followed. And then you wait until it's all evenly melted in, and this can take a little while, so be prepared to be patient. If you wanted to speed this up, you could just get something like a crock pot or something like that, but I decided because I'm doing testing right now, I'm just going to use this small setup. So you take that, and then last, and it's kind of important to add this last, I don't know why, I just know it is important, you add your vitamin E oil, and that will, again, help trap the moisture and make it more moist on your lips. And I think I added, what was it, like 6 drops of that, 6 to 8 drops of that. And it's not an exact science, it's kind of a little bit of an art, to be honest. But after that, I added my 6 drops of oil, that is. And this will give it that nice smell, kind of like the Burt's Bees stuff. It's not going to be as strong as the Burt's Bees because I didn't add as much as they do, but then you mix it, and here comes my favorite part. The best part, I think, is the pouring it part. Because once you've got it all made and all the waiting and all the difficult stuff is out of the way, all you have to do is get that satisfying pour. So here I've got my 2 containers, and the container doesn't really matter, but the better the container looks, the better you'll feel when you're done. So I suggest getting something that'll make you feel like you've made something pretty awesome. And I think it's just a better way to store it because you'll actually use it if it's, something that's easy to carry around. And now you add your oil, or your lip balm. And look at that. Super duper satisfying. And you've actually made it, and the smells coming off this are great. If you've ever burned a scented candle, imagine that, but not really as overpoweringly strong. It's really awesome. So now you've added that, all you have to do is the most difficult part, and that is wait. You've got to wait for it to cool off. Luckily, you guys don't have to wait, because through the magic of editing, it's done. And it looks legit, it smells legit, but the question is, does it work? And I'm going to show you very shortly that it does work. It's pretty awesome. It's a pretty simple recipe, but lip balm's pretty simple. A lot of these natural things made with beeswax are actually pretty simple. If you want to get them complicated, you can, but I don't see any need to do so. And it works. I mean, it's just lip balm, and it worked perfectly. It made exactly what I hoped it would. It doesn't have the stronger tingle like the Burt's Bees stuff does, but it really smells great, and it feels great. And thanks for watching. Hopefully catch you next time.